So, here in the UK, a 15 rated film means that you have to be 15 to see the film, no exceptions. Back a few years ago, we had two ticket types at my cinema, adult and child. It's since changed to incorporate a teen ticket. Child was under 15, and adult was anything 15 and above. This guy comes in with his mates, back of the queue to get in, but can be heard throughout the foyer being all loud and obnoxious. And the generalization I've found in my experience in the cinema is that if they're teens on their own, and they're loud and obnoxious in the foyer, there's a high chance they'll be the same during the film, and generally be a nightmare in the screen. I start to notice some other people in the queue looking over at him, and rolling their eyes. I get the pleasure of serving this guy. Comes up to me, still shouting over at his mates, who are getting served by some of my colleagues, and asks for a ticket to see this 15 rated film, can't remember which. One of these low budget crappy horrors that have come out in their many sequels recently, Insidious, or Sinister, or Annabelle, or whatever. He looks about 16 over 17. But since he said a ticket, work script autopilot takes over as I ask how old he is, so that I can sell him the correct ticket type. Him being the person he is, and probably since he's gotten away with it before to get the cheaper ticket price, said he was 14. The moment he said that, a massive grin washes over my face. Sorry mate, this film's a 15. Holding back Macleod not having to deal with his bullshit for the next 2 hours. I can't let you in. No amount of begging and pleading would make me budge, so he asks to speak to the manager. Manager comes down, sides with me, and he's on his way. Day ruined. The entry about Bob wearing a suit reminded me of my old job. I worked for a computer warehouse type superstore. Right after I was hired I learned it was not a great job. Almost everyone hated it, but you had some potential to make good commissions in sales, so people kept their heads down and never questioned anything. Most competent people never stayed longer than a year and employee turnover was huge. Truly a terrible place to work. I had recently sold my computer store and was taking a year off. After a few months I got bored and got this job as a part-time to get me out of the house and supplement the cash out from the computer store sale. Being in this position gave me some freedoms some of the other people who worked there didn't have. If someone was complaining about something, I was more than happy to bring it up with management, since I didn't care if I got fired. I'm pretty sure the store manager hated me. Dress code for guys was white button-down shirt, tie, and some form of Dockers type pants. Since this job didn't pay much for non-sales staff, many employees had cheap ill-fitting button-down shirts and one cheap tie. Honestly, the staff would have looked better in a store branded shirt or polo shirt. But since this store was crazy cheap, that would cost them overhead, and you can't have that. I've got a collection of some really nice ties I'd collected over the past 15 or so years, mostly vintage silks from the 50s and 60s. I actually hardly ever wore ties, but collecting them was a little hobby of mine. If I saw a particularly nice one, I'd nab it. One morning I was getting ready and managed to forget my tie. It was about a 40-minute drive to work, and I noticed my missing tie when I got out of the car at work. No big deal I thought. Nope, wrong. About an hour into my shift I get pulled aside by my direct manager. I explain I somehow forgot about my tie and didn't really think it was a big deal. I also explained I was 40 minutes away from home and didn't have time to go back before my shift started. My direct manager was pretty cool, but he has his stupid rules to follow, so I got passed over to ours and the store manager. The store manager acted like I just poured epoxy into all the toilets. He was crazy pissed at me. He lectured me for 25 minutes about the importance of the dress code, how those that don't follow it aren't team players, and how, if it happens again, I'll be looking for a new job. He actually made me read the section in the employee handbook on the dress code, so I knew it and could follow it to the letter. All this over a tie. I got written up and sent home to get my tie. Since I was 40 minutes from home I just went to a local store, bought a cheap tie, and hung out at a cafe for an hour. That weekend I went thrift store shopping. I spent all day hitting every thrift store I could find. I found the ugliest, widest, shittest ties I could find. Massive 1970s brown vomit colored ties. Ugly green avocado colored ties as large as a lobster bib. Patterns that made eyes bleed. Polyester atrocities time forgot. I also bought some Christmas ties with Santa and holiday wreaths. It was summertime. To top it off, I bought some terrible oversized white button-down shirts. A few were just off-white enough they looked almost dirty. My next day at work I went from being the guy who looked fairly sharp to someone who looked like they escaped a mental ward in the 70s. My direct manager saw me and started to laugh. He got it. He just patted me on the back and I was back to work. The store manager saw me later in the day and was not pleased, but since there was no wording in the employee guidelines on ties being within reason or shirts fitting, he couldn't do anything. I sure he thought it was just a fluke for the day. Sadly, he was wrong. My ties just got worse and worse as I uncovered them in thrift stores and garage sales over the next few weeks. I'd tie them short or uneven so the back hung lower from the front. I'd triple wrap a 4 in hand not to make it look wrong and sideways. I found so many I started giving other people these terrible ties, and within a few weeks 1/4 of the people in my department looked completely ridiculous. I ended up quitting about a month or so later. My last day at work I distributed all my atrocities to everyone I knew at work to let my tie legacy live on. I was working at an amusement theme park during my first year of college. There were 3 adjacent food shops near the park entrance, and we would often switch between them as our schedule changes. One is a bakery, the second an ice cream parlor, and the third a hot dog spot. I worked a ton of nights at the ice cream parlor, which by far is the stickiest, most hectic place compared to the other 2. We worked the earliest and latest shifts out of all the areas because we're at the front of the park. I was at the end of a 16-hour day and my hairnet was fraying. My employer pays out overtime like Tic Tacs. People would stand in a long line and wait up to 45 minutes for our ice cream. It's not that our menu is to die for. It's because that's all people know in theme parks. Lines. You wait in lines. Occasionally, we have guests complaining to us about the line, but haven't taken that time to look at the menu and know what to order. Other times, we have guests who have special requests for their desserts. We fulfill their orders as best as we can, but if it's not a good idea, well, try to suggest an alternative. We had a loud and sticky kid who was screaming bloody murder in line. Nobody was into it. Her family was over it. She made a beeline to my register without waiting for me to call them over. My guest left, and I was still counting my change when the kid let out a demanding hello to call for my attention as her family made their way over to my spot. I asked her nicely to wait while I finish up. She said I should be done by the time she comes up. Her parents were out of earshot when I replied, in a pleasant but stern tone, that she should have waited until I called her over. She was a little shocked to hear anything said back to her, but on with the transaction. The parents ordered their waffle bowls, 2 siblings ordered their sundaes, then the kid in question. She asked for a double scoop of rainbow sherbet and a sugar cone. Now, think of rainbow sherbet and whatever memory you have of it. Soft, mushy, and never in a stiff or hardened state. And as delicious as they are, sugar cones are teeny tiny compared to our traditional waffle cones. I asked if she was sure. She shouted yes in exasperation and complained to her parents. They were tired and told her to just finish ordering. I warned her that it might melt and asked her if she wanted me to turn the double scooped sugar cone upside down in a cup so she can eat it without worrying about it spilling off the sides. She grumbled and gave me a resounding no. Said a couple of other unruly complaints to me. Her family didn't react. So I went ahead and gave that sweet girl the biggest double scoop of rainbow sherbet I can fit over the small sugar cone. I couldn't even bring it to her fast enough across the counter before it began melting and falling over the sides. She ambitiously tried to lick it while walking away. It was time for my break, but I saw her cry over the fallen top scoop as I got my till out and left. A louder scream echoed through the shop, and I turned and see that the second scoop had dropped as well. I know. This is a kid. But sometimes kids are fucking stupid, and all we can give them is exactly what they ask for. I work in a factory doing maintenance. A lot of what I do is told to me verbally. Recently our new general manager brought up to my boss how he thinks I do not do any work, and what was the point of having me employed. My boss asks me, and I tell him that my jobs, including the ones the general manager gives me, do not get paperwork done up for them, because the office cannot be bothered to file it. He tells me to fill out work orders for the work I complete, that the office can handle some extra paperwork anyways. A week later I get told to please stop making work orders, because the office couldn't keep up. I had filled out 237 for every job I did, big or small. So this happened a couple years ago. I was getting into home mead making, and I wanted to buy a bottling machine to make things a little easier. I go on Amazon and buy one that is the best from the price, but was still a little over $300, so not a small investment either. The merchant sends it out. It was through a third party, not Amazon. It arrives and it's defective. The nozzle on it was manufactured wrong, and liquid couldn't pass through it, which was the point of the whole thing. I contact the company about it. I was very relaxed about it. It's no one's fault really, but I'd like a working one. And I ask them to send me a new valve, or I can send the whole machine back, or whatever they want. They email me back instant aggro. They say I set up the machine wrong, and I probably broke it, etc. We go back and forth a bit. It's very obvious that the machine is broken, and he thinks I'm a giant idiot. So it's obvious he's not going to let me return it, and I go through Amazon then. To get a refund they send me another email even more aggro saying that I was ruining his Christmas, and that I was too stupid to use a machine. He actually used the word stupid. Now here's the compliance bit. I elevated the complaint on Amazon, and there's a kind of monitored contact between me, Amazon, and the merchant. In his first message in this exchange he claims to have received the machine and it works fine, and I really am the idiot he claims me to be, and I'm harassing him unfairly. Cut to me in my kitchen staring at the totally unreturned machine. Very confused look on my face. I mean, we had been troubleshooting the thing that morning, and he was pointedly not giving me return information, so I'm not sure what play he was going for. I come back with, well, if you received the machine and it works fine, you can return my money and we can be done with the whole thing then, huh? The Amazon rep agreed. The guy never said shit after that. The money shows up in my account, and the guy's at a bottling machine, because he couldn't wait for me to return an item, before trying to say he was right the whole time. I spent my refund buying a new nozzle for about $35. Works great. If you enjoyed the stories, slap the like and subscribe button for more of them, and don't forget to support the original writers with an upvote. Links are in the description. Peace out, and catch you tomorrow.